Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. Mishmash Monday. I actually love these mishmashes because I get to do a bunch of different things, and I had a great night's sleep last night. I must have slept like 10 hours, and the last hour of when you sleep is when you go through your REM, your rapid eye movement, when you dream, and that's when you get your best sleep, believe it or not. And I had some good dreams. I woke up refreshed, but I got to tell you, I was in a mood for a rant. I don't usually do this, but I'll tell you, I guess it was because yesterday I went upstate and I met some of the neighbors, that the new neighbors when Pat and Sue moved out, and the new neighbors were there, and there was a young kid there, and yeah, he must be about 15 years old or something, and I don't know what is going on with this generation. I really don't. When I was growing up, and many of you, we had some great role models out there, We had manly men and womanly women, It was just, if you were a little confused, which we all do, everybody goes through a little state of confusion when you're in your, going through puberty and stuff like that. All you had to do was look around, and there were role models. They were everywhere you looked. Today, it's like they're shoving these things down these kids' throat, and I'm telling you, these kids are all confused. And I remember one of the things I did when I was a scout leader was try and make, the boys into men, is basically what you're trying to do, and you have to be a good role model, and you have to show them the correct things. And I'll give you an example. Like growing up, I grew up in a time when our grandfathers were probably World War II, and our fathers were probably Korean, era, and these guys were all squared away, I can't hold a candle to my great-grandfather or my father. These guys were really, squared away. And me, on the other hand, I was kind of, you're goofy a little bit until you get your sea legs, so to speak, until you get old enough that you start to go on your own. And I remember my dad, even learning the handshake. What happened to the handshake? It kills me. For hundreds of years, men learned to shake hands. It probably goes back to the Roman times, It was a masculine handshake. You grip a man's hand, you shake it, hello, you greet, whatever. And it was, even growing up. And then all of a sudden, in the 70s, things started changing, men started becoming a little more feminine. The whole slap me five thing, I don't know where that came from, instead of a good old-fashioned handshake. And then later on, the 80s and stuff, there were different clasping handshake and all this. And, it's like the old-timers would never buy into that stuff. And the worst stuff is now, now you get this thing, the high five. Who came up with the high five? The most effeminate act of anything. In my troop, if you were banned from if you high-fived, you were doing push-ups. I just couldn't deal with that. And I used to make the kids line up and shake hands when they came in. If you put a wet fish in my hand, that was it. You were done. And that's another thing today. That's part of, the role models would teach the kids, this is how you shake hands when you go in for an interview. And you shake that man's hand or that woman's hand, you don't put a wet fish in their hand, because that's going to leave an indelible impression on them and say, oh, look at this guy, And same thing was, if you got pink hair and 40 earrings in your face, and then you tell me you can't get a job, come on now. This is the lowest unemployment we've ever had in my entire, in the history of the United States. You could tell me you can't get a job? Maybe you think it has something to do with your pink hair and 40 earrings in your face? So I think role models, I think we need to get back to it. And I don't know. I'm sorry about the rant. I just woke up and I was in the mood for that kid yesterday. He just set me off, There he was, just, you say, hey, how you doing? How's everything? And how you been? All right? Everything good? Nothing. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Let's get started with a couple tour restorations. I got some good things today. Remember that vise we were talking about? That nice Polish vise? A lot of you said, keep it, don't restore it, don't do anything. But we got to address the jaws. We got to do that at least. So let me show you what, one way you could address the jaws very easily. Let's do that. Here we are at the vise, and you can see here the jaws are chipped up over here. You see that? And that's unacceptable, and I'll show you why. Because some of the operations you want to do, you want to have an area that's sharp over here, and those chips will give you problems later on. However, the rest of the jaw is in great shape, so it's only that top 1/8 of an inch, so that's what we're going to take off. And we also have a good standoff off the, the actual base of the vise. So, and we want to be careful not to grind on this section, just the jaws. These jaws are replaceable, and they still make them, and I think they're $15. So I'll try and pick up another set, but there's no reason why these can't be still used for a while, because that's what you do. As these get buggered up, you take them down until you can't use them anymore, then you replace them. Now we're going to start with the grinding disc. We're not going to use a flap disc till later. That's for smoothing out. This is for taking off heavy stuff. You can't do something like this on a milling machine or something, because these are hardened jaws and you really tear up your end mills or something like that. So you're better off doing it with an abrasive disc. Okay, now we finished with the, this is the grinding disc. You can see here, we took out all those chips and everything. You see, it looks nice, right? The only thing we have to do now is we have to straighten that out to make it look flat, and we'll do that with the flap discs. And we use worn ones. It don't really matter, because we're just trying to smooth this out and get it nice. Now, you got to remember here, on the other edges here on this, you're going to have a little bit of sharpness, because you took it down a little bit. So you want to make sure you get those nice. You don't want them too sharp. But you see, we still have a good eighth of an inch up there if we had to do this again. You keep doing it until these jaws are worn out. There's nothing wrong with them. And now we'll finish up and make it look nice. And we're calling this project done. Look how nice these are now, huh? Total time on this project was like 20 minutes. You could see now the jaws, they line up. Obviously, they're perfect as far as no sharp edges, inside or out. I did with the wire brush here, the wire wheel on both sides. There's nothing sharp on these jaws. You could touch them all over. And now you can do any kind of cutting procedure that you want. The real nice way to do it, if you had somebody that had a surface grind, or if you happen to have one, you put this under the surface grinder, you can make these super flat. But I mean, we did a decent job. We took out all those chips, and these jaws are good for, and I don't beat on my jaws, but let me show you one of the applications that having a nice pair of straight jaws. Now, this is a procedure you don't usually see, but let's say you had a piece of metal or something, or plastic or something that you had to cut across. You didn't have any shears the proper way. You could put it into your vise like this, and you could tighten it down like this, and give it a good tightening on here. And then what you would do is you would take a chisel like this, and you could hit it across here and actually cut it using the jaws, and I'll show you how that's done. Now, just so you know, when you do cut this way, you don't get the smoothest of cuts because of, obviously, the procedure that you're using. You're better off with a tin shear, and this is the kind of cut you'll get. But you see, it is acceptable, and then you could file it down or whatever. But if you can always use your jaws to trim metal or plastic or something like that, and again, you get yourself a chisel. It doesn't have to be it could be even a wood chisel, that you're not going to use for wood anymore, but a cold chisel's the way to do it. Okay, next up on the Mosh. I saw this episode once when I was a kid on The Simpsons. I'll put a link in the description of this one part where Homer had to do jury duty, and he was wearing, and I have to show you. I just ordered this. I got it. Check this out. And this is them. How great is this, huh? I mean, you could be on jury duty or something, or in your car. This is a great thing. If I would have had these at work, oh, this would have been great. You could just sit there and you could sack out for a while, and meanwhile, it looks like you're wide awake. And meanwhile, all they are is you could see, it's a pair of sleep goggles. I thought they were pretty fun. Okay, next up on the Mosh, here's a unusual tool that you don't see too often. They're not super rare. I mean, they're out there, but you don't see these too often. It looks like a pair of pliers, right? But watch what happens when you open it. Look at that. A nice parallel action, and it expands the cone. So I had no idea what these were when I bought them. I just thought that this would be pretty interesting, for something. Widening washes or O-ring, something, whatever. I figured I could use it. I found out what it is, but let's clean it up, and then I'll tell you what it is. Now you know my favorite part. Remember what these look like before we started. And We're calling this project done. What this particular tool is, John Anderson invented this back in 1895. He got the patent in 1896. Stanley wound up making these, a lot of them, and this is a tool for expanding lead pipe. Now, back in the 1800s, lead pipe was a major source of getting water to your house before they knew the dangers of lead. And so what happened was you would put this in one end of the pipe, you would open up a little bit and turn it, and then you would slip it into the other, and then you could solder it or whatever you had to do to get a watertight seal. And I could still see this being used today for some kind of, you know, something I could use it for, I'm sure, because it expands nicely, and it is parallel expanding, so it's not just a tip. So if I had to expand something, I could see me using this for leather washes or something like that. That's why I didn't do a over-the-top polish job on this, because I really tend to use it. I think it will be coming useful for it. 1896, John Anderson, lead pipe expanding. So in closing, I hope you enjoyed today's Mosh. Sorry about the early rant, but every once in a while I got to get out of my system. Hope you all have a nice day. Take care now. Bye-bye.